Greetings and welcome to what should hopefully be a rather short talk on monuments as a gateway to history. Now, monuments are all around us. In our hometowns, we probably tend to forget they're there just because we're so used to them. When we go on holidays to other cities, we'll probably seek them out as some sort of tourist attraction, a chance for a bit of a selfie, something like that. But right now, we're going to take a bit of a more serious approach to everything and talk about how we can analyze monuments, especially how we can see them as expressions of their historical context or the time when they were created. There are quite a few different approaches to analyzing monuments. You could focus on, say, are they an expression of grief, sorrow, or victory? Was something that was created by the government or local people or some sort of private initiative. But today we're just going to talk something really basic, namely, are they expressions of absolutism or democracy? Now, a few examples before I go on to Denmark specifically. Here we have the British Queen Anne in front of St. Paul's Cathedral in London. Obviously, she is placed higher than the regular people. She has a bit of a haughty or arrogant look on her face. She looks down on everybody. So this is clearly a sign of absolutism. A bit later on, this is the Finnish National Cemetery in Helsinki, the capital of Finland, where you can see the tombstones of many of the soldiers who were killed during the Second World War. These are both officers and enlisted men lying side by side in neat rows. Each man has the same sort of headstone, the same plant next to the tomb. So this is obviously a sign of democracy. But of course, in all democracies, some men are more equal than others. So this is the monument of the Finnish military leader, Mannerheim, who was not even killed during the battle, but who is still remembered here next to his soldiers. Now on to our Danish examples. I'm going to talk about the Battle of Fredericia, which took place on the 6th of July 1849. A bit of context before we move on to the monuments to this battle. It was a battle between Danes and German-speaking rebels. This was a time when democratic movements swept across Europe. There had been, well, once again, a revolution in France. The German-speaking rebels wanted, amongst other things, democracy in their provinces in southern Denmark. And just 1 month before this battle, Denmark had actually achieved its first more or less democratic constitution. Hand in hand with the democratic movements, we have nationalism. That is, you celebrate your language, your cultural heritage, your history. And in the more intellectual circles, we also have romanticism. When you look back to European antiquity, to ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and you try to find inspiration from those times. Just a bit of a geographical overlook. This is Denmark as it looks today. Right here you have what is today northern Germany. Back then they were areas ruled by the Danish king. And right here you have my hometown, Fredericia. During this war, which we call the First War of Schleswig, Fredericia was besieged by these German-speaking rebels. And the night between the 5th and the 6th of July 1849, the Danish forces broke out from this fortress town, and although they suffered rather heavy casualties, they managed to drive the rebels away. So a victory, but a rather costly one. And please remember, this was right in the movement when Denmark went from being a country ruled by an absolute ruler to being a democracy. Now, obviously, this battle was very celebrated in its own time and still is today. And every time you celebrate a battle, you will do so by putting up some sort of monuments. So, the first monument was erected in 1853, and this is what I call the democratic part of the commemoration. Now, the monument from 1853, as you see right here, bears right here just the date and the year of this battle, and you see two regular, completely normal soldiers carrying one of their dead comrades away. As far as my research goes, this is probably the first monument in world history that represents the regular soldiers instead of the generals, so once again, very democratic. Another democratic element is that this memorial is put right on top of the mass grave where all of the dead Danish soldiers, officers, or most of the officers, and enlisted men alike were buried. And around this mass grave, you can still today find the names of every one of the fallen soldiers, including a few child soldiers and even a few firefighters who were laid to rest right here. So remembering every single name, which was pretty much unheard of at this point. It's something you see in European monuments from the First World War onwards. But once again, this was a part of the democratic Danish movement, so obviously they tried to remember every single man, because in democracies, well, everyone is important. A few years later, they wanted to put up a second memorial, and there was some discussion of what it should be. One of the ideas, apparently, was in the spirit of nationalism to put up a statue of Thor, the Nordic god of thunder, whom you may know in a rather silly version from the Marvel and Avengers universe. In the end, they chose not to use a statue of Thor, but instead this one, which is simply called the Foot Soldier. It is a completely regular soldier in his normal uniform. He has captured some sort of enemy position. He has put a foot on one of their cannon. He is basically in charge of everything. And as monuments go, he's quite huge. The ones you see over here on the left, if you actually stand in front of the memorial, the height of the soldiers will be about 1.7 meters, so life size really. The foot soldier over here is twice as tall. He is enormous. So once again, just a celebration of the regular Danish man. But of course, as I said, this is sort of a crossover between absolutism and democracy. So, well, please do not forget the generals, the leaders. The first monument erected to one of the generals was to the overall commanding officer, whose name was Bülow. As you can see, there is a slightly different inspiration here as when we compare it to what you saw from the foot soldier. The foot soldier was in his regular uniform, and I know it's a little hard to see in this picture, but this general is actually clad in some sort of Roman cape, a reference to Romanticism and obviously ancient Rome. As you can see, they have also chosen to erect a triumphal arch over him at a later point. Once again, a clear reference to something Roman. The other general who had a monument dedicated to him was this charming fellow called Olaf Ree. Now, Ree actually fell during the battle. He was simply killed. And his story is a bit of an interesting one, because he was born in Norway at a point or at a time when Norway was still ruled by the Danish king. As a young man, he actually served in a German-speaking army. I think it was the one of Prussia. That was completely normal at this point, but celebrating him as a hero who fell for Denmark is a little harder when you know that he had actually spent time in a German-speaking army instead. So perhaps in an effort to focus a bit on his Nordic heritage, you can see that they have actually included right here an ancient Viking sword onto the monument, the bust here of him. Now, I'm pretty sure that he did not wield a Viking sword into the battle, but still it shows some sort of nationalism, celebrating your heritage, and definitely something that is not German. So this was the rather confused memorials to the Battle of Fredericia. You see democracy, you see, if not absolutism, then at least a celebration of the generals at the same time, and you also see traces of nationalism, traces of romanticism, alongside these traces of democracy. Now, I hope this has given you some sort of better understanding of what to look for in monuments, and I hope you'll take a look at the monuments around your hometowns. Try to figure out, are they a leftover of democracy, absolutism, or what kind of society is celebrated? What kind of society was the ideal in that historical context? I hope I'm able to do a few more of these, perhaps focus on some of the uh, First World War monuments when you go from celebrating victories to mourning the dead instead, which of course also is a movement towards democracy and perhaps a different view on war. That's all for now. See you around.